Seriously, how come this didn't give me nightmares as a kid? The footage you're seeing is from Hoodwinked, a children's film released in 2005 that parodies the tale of Little Red Riding Hood. Many say it's a low-budget version of Shrek, but as I'll later prove, this is an unfair comparison as the two are quite different. I loved this movie as a kid, but I didn't want to be blinded by nostalgia. Imagine my shock when discovering on a rewatch that it's actually really good. Yeah, the animation is terrible as you can see, but the screenplay is what comes out on top. Hoodwinked is a really interesting case study on writing making up for bad visuals. Let's celebrate the film's 20th anniversary by learning about its production and analyze the end result. Okay, let's quickly get the animation out the way. Shrek came out 4 years prior, so how come this is such a downgrade in quality? It's because Hoodwinked was created independently on a low budget. This was one of the first computer animated films done outside of the big studios, which meant a lot less resources available.
This movie started with 3 guys in an apartment in Pasadena. It was like a couple of us are writing the script in one room. Todd and I are drawing storyboards while Tony is scanning and cutting them on a Mac. And then Todd's composing all the music on a guitar in the kitchen.
The technology to create an animated film is a lot more accessible nowadays, demonstrated by the success of Flow last year. That film was produced for less than $4 million, which is about half of Hoodwinked's budget. It even won an Oscar too. However, things were much different in the early 2000s due to how expensive and time-consuming computer animation was. Big studios had the capital to invest in the talent and equipment needed, with films like Monsters Inc. and Finding Nemo costing around $100 million to make. Compared to Hoodwinked's measly $8 million budget, it's a miracle the film was made at all. To save costs, the animation was outsourced.
One of our producers said, you know, I just got done working on some projects with a group of animators in the Philippines. And that sounds crazy at first, it's like, oh yeah, we're all gonna get on a plane and go to the Philippines. And it turns out that that was the most economical way to do it.
Director Corey Edwards traveled there 15 times over the 3-year production period to ensure things went smoothly.
These were all very young artists just coming out of art school, and they had never worked on a feature before. But our producer was able to kind of pull them together.
As the budget had little wiggle room for fixing animation mistakes, writers Corey, Todd, and Tony had to ensure the script was locked in before production could begin. Knowing they couldn't compete with the likes of Disney and DreamWorks, they made a deliberate creative decision to imitate stop motion. Yes, the final product's animation is still horrendous, but I think it's impressive given the lack of resources. As you can tell, Hoodwinked had an extremely chaotic production. The thing is, bad productions don't always mean a film is gonna fail. Apocalypse Now had an absolutely outrageous behind-the-scenes story, yet the end product is still considered to be one of the all-time greatest films. Knowing this, let's delve into the screenplay and see why it works so well. Most of Hoodwinked's writing is pretty standard for a kid's film. There's a lot of quips, talking animals, action set pieces, and a simple whodunit storyline. Despite being a fairy tale parody, however, I found the script to be a lot more sincere when contrasted against Shrek's satire. While a lot of that franchise's humour comes from deconstructing and poking fun at kids' tales,
do you think maybe he's compensating for something?
Hoodwinked's jokes tend to be a lot more silly and genuine.
You came to the right goat.
This was Corey's intention, and likely stems from his Christian background. Before you guys comment below, I don't want you to get the impression that I dislike either franchise. In fact, I love Shrek's humour, as it's suited to the story that DreamWorks are trying to tell. Since their intention is to make fun of Disney, the satire has its place in the narrative. Likewise, Hoodwinked's sincerity is a welcome change of pace. Many family films rely on sneaking in subtle adult humour to keep parents entertained.
Sassy housewives want to meet you.
Hoodwinked manages to have fun, lighthearted jokes that everyone can enjoy without relying on innuendos that go over kids' heads. Shoutouts to Japheth and his horns, by the way, best part of the film.
I always come prepared.
As the audience is trying to figure out who the goody bandit is, it's necessary to get them fully invested in the story. Including satire would cheapen the screenplay and make it hard to take the police procedural seriously. In fact, that's the aspect of the script I want to talk about next. Hoodwinked's structure is extremely unconventional for a children's film, with many events occurring out of order. Non-linear narratives are now quite common. with some recent examples including Oppenheimer and Challengers. Of course, it was Quentin Tarantino who popularized this in the 90s with films like Reservoir Dogs. I go more into depth on this form of storytelling in my Challengers video, so be sure to give that a watch if you haven't yet. Moving on, it is extremely rare for a children's movie to use a non-linear structure. Studios tend to keep the plot moving in chronological order to avoid confusing the audience, especially so kids can easily follow along. The thing is, Hoodwinked wasn't produced by a big studio with test screenings and profit margins in mind. All they had was an idea which came from Todd Edwards. What if we told the story of Little Red Riding Hood as a police investigation? This is where the non-linear aspect comes into play, citing Rashomon and Pulp Fiction as inspirations. While the 4-character flashbacks aren't complex, I love how the film breaks traditional storytelling norms to give the audience something fresh. Kids tend to be a lot smarter than studios expect, so it's nice to have a screenplay that respects their ability to keep up. Such a structure also allows the writers to come up with gags that wouldn't be possible otherwise, like the reveal that Red wasn't hallucinating in this scene. Turns out Granny was genuinely flying through the air while doing her extreme sport hobbies. As a side note, these videos take a long time to make, and I try my best to ensure they're not just plot summaries like many other channels on YouTube. If you're liking this one so far, please double check that you're subscribed, as a majority of my viewers aren't. I aim to upload a video every 2 weeks, so hitting the bell will notify you when these go live. Anyways, back onto the topic of Hoodwinked. What do you get when you combine an entertaining screenplay with terrible animation? As I'm sure you've seen, the final product was quite entertaining. It might come as a shock then, but the crew couldn't find a distributor for most of the film's production.
Once we were finishing it, we still had nobody to put out the movie. And that is when one studio came calling.
It was only at the 11th hour when the Weinstein Company made an offer. Yes, that disgusting piece of shit Weinstein. This is why you cannot find the film on any streaming service today, because the company went bankrupt after Harvey's arrest. Anyways, when Hoodwinked was released, it was extremely profitable, making over $100 million on just an $8 million budget. Sure, the critics were harsh, mainly due to the animation quality, but audiences around the world seemed to love the movie regardless. It's quite strange when you think about it, as film is a visual medium. Why then would people enjoy something that looks bad? Well, okay, I'm being a bit harsh, because the film doesn't exactly look bad. Yeah, the quality is poor, but it's at least not going to hurt your eyes watching it. That being said, I think this is one of those rare instances where the subpar visuals actually work in the film's favour. To see what I mean, let's imagine for 1 second that this same film was made by Pixar or DreamWorks. We have the exact same script, but better rendered 3D models, textures, and animations. Well, we actually don't have to imagine this at all, because Hoodwinked got a sequel. This was released in 2011 and cost $30 million to make, meaning the quality in animation increased dramatically. Audiences hated it though, and it ended up being a box office bomb that failed to even recoup its budget. While the visuals were better, the script took a massive nosedive and failed to have the same charm as the original. The corporatized version failed because Hoodwinked's janky animation style reminds us of its independent status. I wanted to talk about this film because it can teach us an important lesson, even 20 years after its release. In the modern age, filled with test screenings, corporatized movies, studio interference, the reduction of cinema to content, and executives trying to normalize AI in the industry, there's something beautiful about a few mates wanting to bring their idea to life. Hoodwinked's visuals remind us that the movie was created with love and soul, not by a faceless corporation that has underpaid teams doing the work for them. This isn't me trying to say that all big studio movies are bad. At the end of the day, all the creatives behind the scenes are still working hard to produce something that you will enjoy. Think of what a cultural juggernaut the MCU was in 2018. Many people were passionate about these films and still are to this day. This wasn't an accident. Clearly there's something in them that resonates with us. That being said, no MCU film or Netflix drama could ever do what Hoodwinked did. In having such a tiny budget and myriad of production issues, we as the audience got to peer behind the curtain to see the filmmaker's passion. At the end of the day, that's what we come to the movies for. Art is a universal language that allows us to share our lived human experiences, and no amount of AI or studio interference could ever replace that. Okay, maybe I'm looking a little too deeply into a kid's film, but seriously, it's a great lesson that not everything you do needs to be perfect. Sometimes all you need is a good idea to get going, and just figure things out from there. That's what I've been doing with my YouTube channel, and I hope you're all enjoying the ride so far. Speaking of, please subscribe if you like this video, as I make content discussing the world of cinema all the time. Be sure to also give me a like if you've made it this far, and let me know your thoughts down in the comments below.